Hello, everybody. Today, we're going to talk about education, entertainment education. And before that, we have a fun question to answer to get to know everyone in this panel. And the question is because Friends reunion just came up, the question is related to the Friends reunion and just like Friends in general, which is were Ross and Rachel in a break?
Hmm.
Okay, who wants to go first?
I can go. Um, I watched Friends a few years ago, so I forgot quite a bit, but I know that part is very memorable. So I will say yes, they were on a break because they did establish that. I believe they did say that, correct? So I guess yes.
Thank you for that answer, Kanika. Barath, do you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. I concur, and I think I heard this or read about it somewhere. I think most of the people would agree that they were on a break, but also that Ross should have waited because that's more of the point, right? If he didn't sleep with, uh, I'm sorry, I forgot the other
Chloe.
person. Yeah, okay. So then I don't think this fight would have happened at all. So he should have waited. It seems to be the popular consensus, um, which I think I would agree to. If it were me, I would have waited. But yeah, they were on
Right,
a break.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think everybody agrees that they were on a break. It's just like, I mean, the two characters I found most people sort of identifying with were Ross and Rachel, at least in my friend circle. And everybody wanted the relationship to work out, right? So for people who were watching it for the first time, it was a real heartbreak when Ross and Rachel broke up. And yeah, Ross probably should not have gone to her office and put so much pressure on her while she was trying to build a career for herself. But I also don't think Rachel intended for the break to be a breakup at that point when she told him to leave. And I think Ross tried to call her back. Mark was there. He misunderstood it. It was a colossal series of misunderstandings, and it led to a lot of grief. But the more important point here is how much the audience relates to this. That it's been what decades, 25 years since that show aired, right? Like since that episode aired, and even now we're still debating this issue. So that's what's really notable here.
All that is true. But even in the Friends reunion, they asked this question, to the cast, and even they said that like they were on a break. So I'm going with the cast on this, and like everybody else in the panel, that's what it seems like, which is they were on the break. So with that, let's go to the topic, and the topic is entertainment education. So what is entertainment education?
I'll be completely honest here. I really don't know. Entertainment and education. I feel like I don't hear that in the same phrase often. So it's an interesting topic, and I'm excited to discuss it. But I actually don't really know.
I mean, if anybody else want to give an answer, if not, I can define. But like, if you guys could do it, that would be better.
So the way I think of it is, popular movies grab and hold our attention, right? So this is because storytelling is culturally important to us. We live by the stories we tell about ourselves and about others. And so this general narrative formula has been honed for centuries and probably longer. But we've only had this modern filmic form for about a century now. And that has had a much wider reach than at any time in the past. It's a very effective format that allows rapid processing of complex narratives. And this, in a way, helps shape public opinion and what people consider aspirational, how they want to lead their lives, it does have an effect in shaping their values and such. So that impact, that influence that entertainment has, that is what I would think of as entertainment education.
That's a pretty good, pretty comprehensive answer, and it is very true in the sense that basically entertainment education is the fact that like the audience thinks that they are here for entertainment, they are here for spending, like basically doing time pass, or doing things not here to learn but just like for some other reason. But then the thing that they watch has like like they do teach you things, they do have an effect on you. And essentially it's a communication strategy for people usually used to sort of expand on like social views and other things. Bharat, you wanted to say something?
Honestly, okay. When I just heard about the topic, I haven't had come across the topic earlier. So when I just saw it, I mean, as an Indian, it was really a juxtaposition of two different yet quite related topics for me: entertainment as well as education. Uh, Again, I mean, I had an open mind when I joined. I mean, when I decided to join the conversation, because I didn't know whether it was going to be uh, uh, whether the discussion is going to be about how to use entertainment as a means to as a means for education, or is it going to be on an educative discussion on the entertainment itself? So I really had no idea.
I think this will definitely be an interesting conversation. With this, the point I'm making is that entertainment is already being used to educate others. Maybe not, that wasn't used as a sole motive, but like it does happen indirectly. But then, like of course, there are a lot of movies that want you to, like feel something about certain topics for you to like go at the end of the movie to like sort of go with something in hand. And since we use friends as the question, for example. Like in one of the episodes, it says, like condom only works 97% of the time. And that's like one of the things that, sort of, even, anyone that who has watched that TV show would now know that. And like, they would think of it as like a fact that, condom only works 97% of the time. And that was something that was educated to the people. But then like, when you watch the Friends episode, you didn't go into, okay, let me actually learn something from this episode. You didn't go in with that mindset. And that is essentially the flux of entertainment education. But Bharat?
Yeah, sorry. Okay, I actually raised my hand because I also wanted to say something with respect to, see, you're saying entertainment education, but I think these sorts of education in itself would fall under infotainment, if I'm not wrong. Okay, and I'm making this I know it's just play of words, or it might seem so, but if you really think about it, any sort of entertainment would can provide a platform for some sort of learning or the other, right? But any and all learnings can't be categorized as education as in itself. So if you want to call something education, that's I mean that is through um, entertainment. I think it should be more. I mean, it should be called as rather infotainment. Is my humble opinion again.
You make an interesting point. So, for those who don't know, Bharat and I went to college together, and most of what happened happened during our college life probably counts more as entertainment than education.
True.
Um, but yeah, on a more serious note, um, the way I look at it is, if you watched a movie or a TV show or read a novel and you feel swept into that world, you celebrate the joys of the character you identify with, or if you are able to feel their pain, their heartbreaks, that the power of narrative, the way these media are able to influence how you think and how you feel, that is exactly what makes it possible for them to shape opinions in the way that we've been talking about. So if you're making a plain argument, that is less likely to be persuasive than a narrative. Even in sales pitches, that's true. So most of what we see in advertising, why do they show all these elaborate imagery? The reason for that is they think that that is a better way to persuade you to buy their product, to think of it as aspirational, to build a brand, than to just tell you why the product is good. It's never that simple. So narrative really matters. And because entertainment industry uses a lot of narrative, I think it is inevitable that whether they want to or not, they end up shaping the public discourse and the mindset of the people who keep up with the industry.
Interesting. But again, if you think about it, the narrative usually is for someone's benefit, right? Why I'm putting forth this point is because, see, education in a sense again needs to be based on facts, whereas entertainment in itself is to make more money, not just money. So they always play the narrative that works out best for them. For instance, let's take the instance of the latest release of Family Man season 2. I didn't quite watch the season yet, but as soon as they released it, it started playing, or rather, it started, wreaking havoc on Tamil nationalist minds, and you can see a lot of YouTube videos or news that totally admonish Samantha for playing the role that she played. So what I'm trying to say is, entertainment as a whole has always been about playing the emotions of people rather than actually making people learn out of it. Probably not 100% of the entertainment industry is like this, but in my experience, or in my limited experience, most of the entertainment industry is like this. Sorry, I spoke out of turn.
No, that's fine. There's no terms. Point is, the industry, yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right about what their goal is. But for the audience, there's a sense of narrative transportation. You feel like you are in the story a lot of the time. That is when you feel really involved with what you're watching, right? So that is what they try to do. They might not seek to be factual in what they do, but that doesn't mean that the industry doesn't shape opinions. Like the Nazis, for example, used films as a way to portray the Jews as evil and untrustworthy. And if you look at early 20th century American films, they always dehumanized black people. So film as a means of setting the narrative has been consistent over the past century.
Yeah, this is very true, and it's a sort of thing where when you do a mistake and then yeah, but he also did it, no, and that sort of thing, but like that he is a part of the movie that you watched, so like they did it, so it's okay for you to do it, and it's that sort of thing. And if you even take in like sort of like the Fair and Lovely advertisement, which like it's a sort of thing where it said like to show like what it means to be beautiful, they also had to show what it means to be ugly, and then it it created an image that kind of perpetuated colorism, and like that is the sort of thing where you know these things happen. And like with the example that Deepak used with like the Nazis, they used entertainment, and they like it's not that it's being done indirectly. Like they knew that they wanted their motive was like this is the way they want to evoke the feelings, evoke the views, and for that, how do you do it? And then they used entertainment as a platform to get people have these views. And so with that, let's ask a question, right? So what are some things like that you think you've had this opinion because you've just like read about this through the media? And like for example, like so with certain entities, because that's the news that you read a lot. Do you think you have a hold the similar opinions?
Since we're talking about Friends, um, I watched Friends all 10 seasons, and I thought, hey, affording an apartment for rent in New York City must be really easy. Turns out that was not the case.
I mean, similarly with different movies and stuff, I can't pinpoint an exact one, but sometimes there are movies that are a bit ambiguous and you really don't know like what the true ending is. So I will search it up just because obviously like out of curiosity, I want to know what's going on, and I'll see like, the first link talks about some random person's opinion about what the ending is, and then sometimes I'll consider it as fact, and I'll be watching the movie with a friend, suppose, and the friend will be like, oh, this is like an ambiguous ending. And I'll be like, no, like I know what the real ending is, even though it was some random person's opinion on the internet, and the movie is intentionally made to be ambiguous, if that makes sense. So, I mean, again, this just relates to social media in general and just, journalism, things like that. And again, what we were saying, that the media does influence how we think. And sometimes we can just click on the first link and we consider it to be fact, even though a lot of the time more research is needed. And maybe some of that research isn't even online, or maybe it is made to be ambiguous. And that's just something that we need to deal with and understand and consider.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That's very relatable. I was also thinking, has anyone here seen Karan Johar's movies?
A few, yeah.
Yeah, so before I went to college, I've seen his movies, and I thought, hey, this is what college life must be like in India. And then if anyone in the audience here has been to college in India, you know that it's nothing like that, right?
Wait, is Mohabbat in Karan Johar's movie? No?
I have no idea.
Yeah, same. I don't know.
Okay, I think this Kabhi Khushi Kabhi Gum is Karan Johar's movie,
Yeah,
right?
that's Kanjo's movie. Yeah.
I mean, I think all of those college scenes were in London. So no, I mean, I don't know, dude. Deepak, which of his movies are you speaking about? I haven't watched a lot of his movies. So.
I mean, even think of like Kuch Kuch Hota Hai and all that, right? That's the first half of that movie is set in a college.
Oh, definitely not. Okay, so I wanted to ask this really. So I am from South India, and I'm as you. So of course, yeah, even you guys, Akshay and Deepak, both of you are from South India. I don't speak Hindi. I don't know about you guys. So I haven't seen a lot of Bollywood movies, right? So, but you should have. How much of it do you think would apply to, states in the South? Because India in itself should be very, I mean, it is supposedly really diverse, right? I'm sure the conservatism applies to uh, the whole of India, but again, I think uh, each of the states really are. I mean, they're completely different when it comes to how the students are or how the society is as such.
Okay, so it can also depends on the movie. For example, this is something that Karan Johar has said, which is like a movie like Badai Ho. Like the way that they took it, they knew the target audience was not everybody in India. Like the moment they, because every movie they have a target audience, they have because cinema, it's maybe for us, we may just see it as a movie, but then even to the minutest details, like like what colors there in the background, and like why that color is chosen for to evoke what emotion, and all that is chosen for a reason. So with that, like for example, like a movie like Badai Ho, they knew that the target audience is going to just be like people from that state, whereas like with like sort of Chennai Express, which is they wanted the Hindi people, the people who Hindi speakers, to also understand the culture outside of Hindi, and hopefully also get some South Indian people to start watching Bollywood. And there are also other movies, like for example like Kuch Kuch Hota Hai, which is something that you don't have to be the target audience can be just any Indian, because it's not talking about anything specific to India much, in the sense that like the movie is not really revolved around that. It's something that they're trying to be global about, and that's why they even bring up like being able to like see it from anywhere. Anyway, Deepak, you also have opinions on this?
Yeah, so my considered opinion on Chennai Express is that it didn't do anything to help uh, relationships between the South and the North. I think they portrayed both
Thank you.
terribly.
I agree too.
Akshay, if I might interject, I don't know whether you are into stand-ups. If you are, I would highly recommend you to watch Aravind Desai's Madrasira.
Oh yeah, I
It's
watched that. Watch a Chapati song, and no, I completely agree with what he's saying. And so I'm sort of what I said was like what they wanted to do with the movie, and I assume that was more of the question. And
Right. So
that, by the way, was real entertainment education.
right. Yeah. So some movies do tend to be geographically or culturally confined, whereas others tend to aim for a wider audience. That is a good point that you're making.
okay, so let's like sort of like try to ask another question, right? So with that, tell me sort of like there are TV show that you sort of grew up with, and tell me like why you liked it, and are there things that you followed because it was done in the movie or like the TV show?
For me, this is an interesting one. I would say The Good Place, which I actually started watching in college, but it's actually like my favorite show, so that's why I'm mentioning it. But something that I followed after that was actually religion, and just looking into different religions, talking to different people about their religions, just because multiculturalism is something that I've always been interested in. Um, Not to say The Good Place necessarily deals with religion, but I mean, obviously you do have like the good place and the bad place, and there's like that idea of heaven and hell in there, which like I didn't grow up knowing about. So I mean, being exposed in Purdue at my university, I got to speak to different people about that. So that was interesting.
um, I hate to sort of burst the bubble, but if anyone has watched the last episode of The Good Place, then it certainly and definitely talks about religions, and it definitely does say things. But of course, I don't want to like give spoilers. So if you watch it, you'll get what I mean.
Actually, that's a bit too late. You did give a spoiler, but tell us about your the show that it influenced your life most.
I don't really have an answer on the top of my head, but I do remember when How I Met Your Mother was sort of like I actually like, watched it as they were coming, and then we would even talk about it in school. And the time when Barney Stinson is one of the characters in the show, he used to say peace. So that was something that happened in like just one episode. But then that episode was like sort of like before he became Barney Stinson, and Barney Stinson is sort of like known because every TV show they have a positive character, a transitional character, and a negative character. Transitional character is one that you follow, and for in How I Met Your Mother, like it's Ted. So you sort of see the show in their eyes, and you sort of emulate them as like the main character. And then depending on the episode, there are both good characters and then bad characters. I'm sorry, like good as in like like morally good and like morally bad, that sort of thing. So so with that, uh, the moment since he started doing peace, and then like Barney did do things that was certainly like morally wrong. I knew that after that episode, I definitely saw like a lot of people, sort of say peace, and even before that, because of Barney Stinson's, like because of how good a character he was, and like as in how good Neil Patrick Harris portrayed that role. I also know a lot of people use the word awesome a lot, and then it's a sort of thing where you people would think that legendary or legendary for daddy is like the one that they would choose, but then that it was by using awesome is something that he used to use as well, but then it was not part of his catchphrase, and that's why people start using it, and I saw that like start pick up a lot in my school, and I also know I use awesome. It's for me it's more of because my name starts with A. I like also like have an affinity towards that start with A. That so the moment people started using it, I started using it as well, and that's why I picked it up as well.
Awesome.
That's interesting. So the show that I guess influenced me was it was actually a cartoon. It was on Nickelodeon. It was called Rocket Power, and there was this kid who is a skateboarder and used to do all these cool things. And I think I was 7 or 8 when I watched it, and to me, that kid, that Auto Rocket, was the coolest person that could ever exist. And I spent my middle school years trying to be like him. Evidently, it didn't work out, but yeah.
I would even say Sweet Life of Zack and Cody. I watched it like when I was around the same age as like the characters. So when I watched it, I usually even think that like I look more towards Cody, and that's because of you know out of me and Deepak as like brothers. Like he was more of the guy who would like break more rules than I do. So with that with that in mind, I usually sort of like taken the like the Cody route, and of course like we were both intelligent and everything, but like I also watched like sort of like animes and read mangas, and so like the nerd role is something that actually like I have an affinity towards it. Like I think that's like a pretty good thing because I actually like sort of reading books and those things. I'm not saying Deepak doesn't, but that's something that definitely gave an affinity to me for the name nerd.
Bharat, what about you?
Oh yeah. Um, I mean, so I guess I've had a lot of shows, shaping up. Uh, how time used to pass during my childhood, but I think it started with Shaktiman, during the 90s. Then during the early 2000s, I'd say Pokemon. Um,
Yeah.
during the middle school, pretty much nothing. And then later in high school, I'd say Naruto. Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped middle school. Sorry. In middle school, it was all about Dragon Ball Z. Then Naruto. Uh, Supernatural during college. Yeah, actually, I saw my first episode of Friends after college.
Okay. So of all these shows you watched, which was the one character who you looked up to, whose attitudes you wanted to emulate?
Emulate. Hmm.
Yeah.
Um, Interesting question.
And that's a question for everyone.
See, yeah, I understand, but I don't think any of. I mean, I wanted to. Of course, I wanted to be the protagonist, or I wanted to emulate the protagonist of all the shows and animes or animations I've watched. But I really think that that's natural, right? When you see a good person in a movie or a TV show or a cartoon, you would want to emulate, if not all, at least some of his qualities. Um, I can honestly say I would want to emulate probably. Okay, this character is called as Goku.
Right,
Uh,
Dragon Ball Z.
he's from the Dragon Ball Z.
So
Yeah, see him.
why Goku?
I don't know. He acts really silly and dumb. But he is sharp where he needs to be. He's in. I mean, he was supposedly born inherently, some sort of warmongering clan. Um, I mean, ironically, he also wants to, fight the most powerful people in the universe and stuff. But he's not warmongering. That's a really thin line that one needs to walk on, right? So, and he is morally like unfallible, to be sure, as far as
Interesting.
I remember. Yeah.
And that kind of describes you as well in some ways. I mean, not the warmongering stuff, but how you try to lead your life. So that is an interesting one. How about you, Akshay?
For me, the moment you asked that question, I thought about Leonard, where with him being the guy I would say as a transitional character, because I'm not as annoying as Sheldon. So
I am.
if you have you are so if you have to pick characters as like the main characters that you follow, as you relate with the most, you could say in the Big Bang Theory, uh, they would either be Sheldon or Leonard, and there are actually two separate episodes in that show which says why the show revolves around them. And one of them is like when Sheldon's drinking, and then he talks to his girlfriend Amy, and like Amy sort of explains if they were city, it would be called Leonardsville, or if they were living somewhere in Middle East or somewhere around those areas, it would sort of be
I understand.
Leonardistan. Yeah, so that sort of thing. Whereas another episode talks about like sort of like around Christmas, where everyone is doing what they're doing because of Sheldon, and by that, like I've always sort of like thought it does, like revolve around Leonard, and so I learned like a lot of those things, and for me, it's also the same thing with like just like Tamil movies where my humor, sense of humor used to be a lot like say Vivek and Santanam and all those people, because I used to watch a lot of their movies, and they definitely had an effect on me. And I remember once like when I was like going to the gym and uh, to the gym trainer, it was in Chennai, and I said this was around the same time when Suri, he's a Tamil comedian who got jacked up, as in like got six packs and everything for a role, for like one scene, and then he has no other scenes where he has to look all that, but he did it because like he felt like that was important, and like that was more inspiring to me than like more like a lot of the mainstream actors like Vijay, Surya, Ajit, and all those people.
Interesting. What about you, Kanika?
I'm trying to think a TV character that I relate to. At least in The Good Place, I don't think I relate to any of them. I kind of like watching shows where all the characters are pretty like eccentric. Um, I don't know. So I can't really find at least like a TV character that I necessarily relate to. But I did want to bring up a separate point, which is a little bit unrelated. But we're talking about the influence of media, things like that, on us in general. I think, like, obviously, this is why like product placements are a thing. Like, they put, at different companies will put ads, or put their products in movies and stuff like that because they know it'll influence their audience. So that was just a separate thought that I was thinking.
Oh no, most definitely. And to an earlier point that Deepak made with like the imagery in advertisements, um, I know a lot of ads, like mostly related with health, usually show like sort of like one person who's struggling, or multiple people who are struggling, where you can see that they are struggling, and that gets you to do what they want. Then say statistics that says, hey, 70% of the people are struggling with this, because everyone chooses a different hook depending on how they want to advertise it, and the one that's used the most is usually an imagery.
I'm a big fan of BBT too. So just wanted to add that you know while I agree that most of us would actually like Leonard. See, again, here's a distinction. We want other people to be Leonard towards us, whereas we would love to be just being Sheldon to everyone else.
Yeah.
I am guilty of it. I can speak for myself.
Man, I just want to be Ash Ketchum.
Yeah.
Just always be 10,
But can just
never
wish.
give up, keep fighting, and eventually he did become a Pokemon master.
He doesn't wash any of his clothes.
He doesn't watch any of his what?
He doesn't wash any of his clothes. Cloth, not even clothes.
Okay.
Yeah. So careful for what you wish for.
Like for me, I saw this cartoon called Oswald. Do you guys have anything like that?
Yeah, I watched Oswald, like I watched Naughty and all those stuff, yeah.
Yeah, Naughty, yeah.
Roald Dahl, right?
Sorry?
I think it was from a series of books written by a guy called Roald Dahl, or I just know his last name.
Oh yeah, Roald Dahl's the guy who wrote
octopus,
Matilda
right?
and all those things.
Right, so Oswald was the octopus, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, true. That.
Right, yeah.
It was really mellow. I agree. Yeah, this Pranesh. I wouldn't say I was a fan, but I did like it very much.
Is there any other show that you really like? Tom and Jerry. Okay, nice. Yeah, that's iconic.
Yeah.
It's funny. I was in. No. It's just like I was in this random restaurant and I saw like Tom and Jerry, and that was the thing that like made me so happy that day, as opposed to like everything else I did. It's crazy how much of an impact that those things have. Sorry, Kanika, you were saying?
Oh, I was just gonna ask, like, long term, we're talking about entertainment, kind of the influence of entertainment. So, you're saying that it had an effect on you. So other than nostalgia, would you say that Oswald might have influenced you in some way? I know it's like a cartoon show, so if not, like, that's also very understandable.
No, I think it's interesting as a child. Like there's a lot of like the moral questions that you ask. I think you ask yourself and others when you're a kid. And I think Oswald was one of those shows. In fact, there's this one episode I remember distinctively where Daisy was this sort of personification of the sunflower. And there's this guy called Henry, who's the sort of penguin. And he's a little, prim and proper, and she's a little clumsy. She breaks a vase of his, and she thinks she's gonna like die because he's so particular about his things. But she goes up to him, says that she broke his vase, and he's like, "Cool, it's fine." And then turns out he's got like an entire cupboard full of vases, and it doesn't even matter to him. And it was just like such an interesting episode because it was like, things don't matter as much as we think they do, right? So it was interesting. I still remember that episode very clearly.
Yeah, that's super interesting. I actually think a lot of those like children's shows have a very intentional moral behind it. Like,
yeah.
I would always remember watching these children's shows, and at the end, like, I would gain something. Like, they were, or even like, I can't remember exactly what show, but at the end, they would say like a recap, and they'd be like, okay, just remember, and they'd say something like, so for example, remember that like your friends are good. I don't know, that's like a random example, but like it doesn't even make sense. But like they'll recap it and then they'll say the moral. Maybe because a lot of the times it might be hard for kids to pick up on it or something, or like always tell the truth. Like it's very overt, you can tell.
Yeah, I get what you mean. Like a lot of TV shows have this thing where, so what did we learn from this? And then you're like, irrespective of whether they actually learned it or not, they would say, "Oh yes, this is exactly what I learned," and I've actually used it in conversation. So what we learned from this, and then I have no idea like what we learned, but I just hope the other person like has to say something to say, and then it just becomes a conversation.
I was just saying that Dora is basically a really good example of this because at the end, like in between the episode, there'll be numerous sections of like, hey, this is what we learned very explicitly. Yeah, it's almost like a cartoon show format, right? Like Peppa Pig has the same thing. So that's my point. Nothing fancy. Sorry, guys.
That's interesting. So sometimes I also feel like the lesson doesn't have to be as overt, like there doesn't have to be someone coming up at the end of the show saying this is what you're supposed to learn. It's also implicit. Like one thing that I always sort of liked in Pokemon was that Ash Ketchum never gives up. He's always determined to become a Pokemon master no matter what happens, no matter how many setbacks, no matter how many new places he has to go to. He never ever gives up. And that, for someone who's 10 and who's watching it, is a really good message to learn about persistence and the value of that. But Ash would probably never use the word persistence, except it's still there.
That's a very good point. And like another example I want to say is the Lucifer series, which is sort of coming. The fifth season came this year, and it's a show like sort of about redemption. And Lucifer is, as you know, the guy who controls hell and all that. So even giving him a chance for redemption is like that's like kind of like what the show is about. Whereas they don't if you see the show, they don't talk about, yeah, this show is about redemption, blah blah blah. No, they don't say it. But then, if you see the behind the scenes sort of thing, as to ask the directors and the creators and all that, if you ask them, they would say yes, that is exactly the theme, and because they know that they're doing it for these reasons. And I want to go to another question where we always ask this question where what is media's role on this or media's role on that, and on like serious topics where like say like mental health topics where how mental health is portrayed in media, and how this thing and that thing. So with that in mind, let's actually ask this question. So like since we're talking about mental health and like education and entertainment, uh, how have you guys seen mental health information relayed in the entertainment form?
I'll start. So I feel like a lot of the time it's hard to find a true match to what is like actually a mental illness. So for example, if you look at someone with maybe like schizophrenia or someone who has hallucinations, they will completely exaggerate what that looks like, and then it'll give people watching a perception of what mental illness is that doesn't really match what it is in real life. And then people will, I mean, that's how you create stigma, because media might try to portray a certain type of narrative about what mental illness is, and then people start to think, okay, so depression means someone's crazy, like like PTSD means that you are just like insane, like things like that. And I think media obviously does play a big role in that, and I know that because I actually took a class like a year and a half ago, and we were trying to find shows to show to the Purdue campus that kind of showed like what mental illness was like. And so we would run it by professors and say, okay, is this an accurate representation? Is this an accurate representation? And the professors would be like, no, like this movie is not accurate at all. Yet like, it's rated as like number 5 most watched movie, like things like that kind of influences how we think. So
This is definitely true because one of the biggest reasons like media is pretty big is because what if you don't see someone who has depression or who has anxiety, and the only time that you see them is through this TV show, then you would definitely form opinions through that, and that's why this is a pretty big thing. Pranesh, you wanted to add something?
No, I 100% agree. I actually was going to say something like along those lines. Like the interesting thing about cartoon shows, like they are, it's crazy how underrated they are. Because if you realize why cartoon shows are so powerful, it is because it's all about being subliminal. So almost all of the cartoon shows are subliminal, except like, I mean, you can't even take the example of the adult shows not being subliminal. And even the adult cartoon shows are subliminal, like the Simpsons or, Cleveland Show or something. And I think there is a question to be asked whether, how much of it is just, art and how much of it is like kind of, is there a broader motive at play there by the content creators? But yeah, it's just fascinating how subliminal it is. It's dangerous. It's very interesting.
Well, something you just mentioned, like, is it art? It's also, I think, important to consider, like, what does the audience want to watch? And so maybe you have someone with depression, and, depression is characterized by things like loss of expression, like, just a straight face, loss of interest, like you can't even get out of bed. So, I mean, in a sense, who will want to watch that? If you see like maybe a movie with depression, you can show someone who's like, breaking down every day, having panic attacks, when that might not be what the reality is. And I mean, that is probably what an audience wants to see. They want like some type of action.
Right. I mean, like, have you seen any explicit example of this? Like, do you mind giving an example? Kanika?
I can't think of one for depression. There was one for amnesia that was like the day would like repeat. I can't remember exactly what the name of that movie was. Like the day would repeat every day for this individual, and they would think it was like the same day. But I think that was like
51st Dates.
Which one?
51st Dates.
Oh, that's the one. Yeah, 51st Dates. And I think it was like an exaggeration of like, I think retrograde amnesia. That's what it was.
Hey, probably one decent movie of Adam Sandler, and you ruined it for me.
So I was also curious about this. Sometimes when you watch a movie, you don't just identify with a character, you identify with a group, right? An example of that would be all of these people categorizing themselves as Hufflepuffs and Gryffindors because they watched Harry Potter. And then they start thinking those personality traits are an easy way to understand and make sense of their own behavior and the behaviors of people around them. So then it starts to become, oh, he's a Hufflepuff, of course he's going to do this, which is kind of like how people use zodiacs. Like he's a Leo, this is how he should be. And there's a risk of oversimplification of human behavior and flattening of nuance when that happens. At least that's how I look at it. What do you guys think?
That's actually very true. And I remember there was a book where people were sort of divided into multiple colors. Deepak, do you remember the book? We talked about it like a few months ago. Oh yeah, so there's a book, and I can actually like put it in the description. And so the book basically talks about just people all sort of like like being of certain colors, and then which color would have problems and which colors wouldn't have problems, and like would work well together. And that's actually very similar to sort of zodiac signs as well, where they have a thing with which zodiac signs go well together. And because it was like a book that actually became very, very popular, even though I don't remember the name for it, it received a lot of criticism for it because people started believing it as an actual truth, whereas it wasn't. And this might not have context without the book, so I will provide the book details in the description. And if nobody else is going, I want to ask like one final question before we do go to closing thoughts, which is something that Pranesh had said just as a point, whereas from this discussion, we are seeing that, how much of a role that media does play. So with that being the case, how much flexibility do people have with like movies and TV shows and everything else? How much of it is it's okay to portray something wrongly and portray something the right way, or there are certain things that it's okay to portray rightly and portray to not do it the right way? So where's the line with all these things?
I think there's definitely going to be disagreement on this because every individual will have their own opinions about it because everyone comes in with their own biases. Of course, filmmakers and other entertainment creators ought to strive to be socially responsible, but ultimately their goal is not just that, right? It's also creative fulfillment. It's making profits. It's all of those things. So it I don't think there can be hard and fast lines. It would have to be issue specific and context specific. Like some things that are portrayed in films have even been used in courts to say this is a behavior that I watched on film. Now I thought it was legal and I did it, but it turns out it wasn't legal. I've seen that kind of thing happen. Maybe portraying illegal behaviors, there should be some kind of disclaimer about it, saying we don't endorse this or something. I don't know. We do see, for example, I mean, this is not illegal, but we see many films say that they don't promote smoking and that it's injurious to health, even though they show people smoking in the film, right? So something like that, perhaps.
I like that idea of including a disclaimer if someone does decide to portray something in kind of a way that's not necessarily appropriate. Um, I do agree that that really will differ between the individuals, but I will say that I think that movies that portray mental illness incorrectly are becoming more like there's more awareness brought to it because I think awareness to mental health is increasing like as time goes on, and so I'm glad that awareness is being brought there. Like I remember recently, I'm not sure if it was recent, but there was a movie made by Sia, the singer, and there's like a famous dancer. Her name was like Maddie Ziegler, and she was playing an autistic child in the movie, but she doesn't have autism, and there was a ton of controversy surrounding that. Immediately after the news came out that she was playing this individual with a mental illness. So I think a lot of it is being brought to light now.
I think there has to be like an understanding of the nuance at play, right? Sure, I'm pretty sure the people who made Power Rangers put a disclaimer saying, "Hey, like, actually don't jump off a building." But kids looked at it and jumped off anyways and died. And there are serious. I mean, it is there is like a latent publicity value to it, but at what cost? People died, and I'm not sure if it's wise to do it, even if you put a disclaimer. I think, or at least one has to consider the nuance of like who's your audience, how they're going to react, even if I put this disclaimer.
Actually, I do remember, something with what you said. I think the movie's Agnipath, where somebody like watched the movie and they thought they can do it too, and they did. I think fall from a building, but like I don't remember the exact details. But yeah, so yeah, there are times when these things they don't understand that not anybody can do it, and sometimes it's not the intention to do it this way, but it does happen.
So how would you like gauge intention? Actually, it's a complicated thing because I mean, there's a quote, right? Like the path to hell is paved with good intentions. So how much weight would you put to intention as opposed to the specific course of action that they take?
Well, I would answer this in sense that, of course, like with each thing, like sometimes our actions don't reflect our intentions, and that is why there is a path to health just with good intentions. But sometimes it's also just that it was not under your control, and there were certain things that you had to do because I think it was either you go to hell or I go to hell, and
Mm-hmm.
then so I just picked the option that was favoring my interests.
Mm-hmm.
So it can differ in those ways, and of
Mm-hmm.
course I do understand why intentions are hard to quantify or like rationalize it,
Mm-hmm.
with intention, I can say at least they wanted to do the right thing, but for example, like if see if it's not that they wanted to do the right thing, whereas like with movies, they didn't want to have the negative effects, but then it just happened to become a byproduct.
Would you
Right.
say that the funding behind movies should be made transparent so that we know who is trying to build a narrative around a certain issue? If a movie talks about something that is in the public interest, would you then require uh, the information about how the production is funded is should it be transparent?
If you can have transparency around that, that would be awesome. But the problem is, the legalese at play for these, these companies and production houses is so weird, because some production houses are public and they have to make mandatory, disclosures about how they are financing the products that they ship, and if they don't do that, they will go to jail. On the other hand, there are some production houses that are private companies, and you can essentially structure them in such a way that no one knows who the owner is. Like, think about it. Like, you can create corporations that own corporations that own corporations, and you can create like a paper trail that's very, very hard to track. And you pay like, 3 suits, $200,000 each. It's nothing. They'll get, they'll create like a very untraceable paper trail. So in terms of like the practical reality of, how do you execute that, it's very tough. But in principle, I agree. I think there should be transparency.
Right. Yeah, you're right. It is very tough, and I can see why, from a regulatory perspective, it's very hard to figure out how to do this properly.
It's interesting. Like I didn't um how important cartoons were slipped out of my mind. So today's conversation sort of brought it up. How do you think? What do you think? Like the most popular artist says about a generation? Like for us right now, it's like BTS, The Weeknd, Ariana Grande, Dua Lipa. It's that basket of like pop and maybe Drake, and then there's another basket of hip hop. Then there's BTS. But before this, we had Britney Spears and Justin Timberlake, and then before that, it was like if you really like dial back time, it was Queen and Beatles, Simon and Garfunkel, all that. Like, what do the most prominent artists of a given generation tell about that generation?
This is a very, very interesting question. It's it's a representation of the zeitgeist.
Okay, Kanika.
Well, what is the current? I think that currently actually there's a lot of different types of music.
I think I get what you're saying. Are you trying to suggest that
I'm saying that like
with the greater diversity of music, like
exactly.
that's
I
all?
feel like that
Okay.
right, that opportunity wasn't there before to explore what you really enjoyed, and I think now there's different streaming services, and you can really. I think it's really up to the individual.
So the actors who dictate the cultural narrative are more decent. Like it's more spread out. That's your point, right?
Yeah, I would say so.
Okay.
And I mean, you think
Okay.
look at things like TikTok, for example. There's just so many different
Mhm.
creators, and you can really tailor your experience to what you're interested in. So
Mhm.
I really think I think this generation is more about like, I guess in a sense, like individualism, and by that I mean like you can really tailor your experience to what you enjoy listening to, and there's that diversity is available to you.
But with that, let's go to closing thoughts. Kanika, why don't you go first?
Okay, sure. So as you all know, I started this conversation not really knowing what entertainment education was. And I feel like after this conversation, I've gained a lot of insight into knowing what it is and how the media influences us. And even though I've always had that in the back of my mind, knowing how, you know, the media and how news can influence how we think, it was not necessarily something that I put a lot of thought into. So this is a really great conversation, and I definitely enjoyed it and learned a lot.
Yeah, I think this was a pretty good exploration of how media shapes our cultural narrative, and also a good. We spent a good amount of time delving into like who's responsible for, you know, the consequences of a certain piece of work that gets put out.
Interesting. Barath, do you want to go next?
Not really.
Man, you have to give closing thoughts.
I'm
It's
sorry,
not
I really
optional.
don't have any doubt. Oh, okay. In that case, okay. Firstly, thank you, Akshay, Kanika, and Pranesh, for having me in this meet. It was really good. This, I think this would be my first of such sort of meeting, or rather a discussion, and I really enjoyed it very much.
All right, Bharat, thank you for being here. We enjoyed having you on. So I'll leave with one closing thought, which hasn't really come up in this conversation yet. But so basically, it's about pornography. It doesn't represent consent properly. It doesn't represent safe sex properly. It doesn't represent the sex drive properly. So if you want to learn, you know, how sex works in the real world, don't assume that it's going to be like what pornography shows. That is a message that I would want the audience to know.
Okay, my closing thoughts is actually like another research, which is research has shown that there were two groups where one group was shown Friends, and then the other group was shown a movie that would evoke sort of anger and betrayal, that sort of thing, and they had to sort of do the same activity where they can it can either be nice to the other person or they don't have to be, and I can put links to this too. And what was seen is that because it was done right after the movie, and they didn't say anything about like it being done after the movie having an effect. What was seen is that uh, in the two groups, so the groups that watched Friends, they were way nicer, whereas the group that evoked the emotions of betrayal and those things, they weren't nice to the people. And so that what that shows is that the movies that you watch would have immediate effects, even though it doesn't have like a long lasting effect. It would have immediate effects on the things that you do right away. And that's one of the reasons why like for the horror movies, right after you watch it, sometimes you're not able to go to sleep. You actually do think something's going to happen, and it's sort of the same thing. And anyway, so since everybody has shared their closing thoughts, like I just want to thank everyone for coming here. You've all given brilliant insights into this topic, and I hope the audience liked it too. With that, I want everyone to have a great day, and the audience too. Thanks so much.
Thanks for watching. For more discussions, make sure to subscribe and turn on the notification bell. Also, make sure to like and comment more topics that you'd like to see us discuss. We'll see you next time.